Maya Delgado was never meant to be in this life. She knew it the moment she stood at the altar, staring at the man she was being forced to marry. Javier Martinez. A poor mechanic. A stranger. A man she had never spoken to until today. Her hands trembled as she clutched the bouquet of roses. Her adoptive parents, Victor and Isabella Delgado, sat in the front row, watching with cold, expectant eyes. They had given her no choice. Marry him, or leave with nothing. Her heart pounded as the priest spoke. She barely heard the words. Her mind screamed at her to run. To fight. To do something. Then boom. A deafening explosion rocked the small church. The stained glass windows shattered, and the chandeliers swung violently. Screams erupted as guests ducked for cover. Smoke and fire burst through the entrance, sending debris flying in every direction. Maya's body was thrown backward, her vision blurred by the chaos. The scent of burning wood and blood filled the air. Then she heard them. Footsteps. Heavy, fast. And then gunfire. Men in black masks stormed the church, automatic weapons raised. "We need the girl," one of them shouted. Maya gasped, her heart slamming against her ribs. They were here for her. Javier grabbed her wrist. "We have to go. Now." She hesitated. Who were these men? What did they want? But there was no time to think. Gunshots ripped through the air, and Javier pulled her behind a row of pews. "Stay low," he hissed. Her wedding dress was torn and blooded as they crawled toward a side exit. More screams. More bodies hitting the floor. Then, a voice cut through the madness. A voice that made Maya freeze in terror. "I told you she would find out the truth," the masked leader sneered. "And now, she has to die." Maya turned and locked eyes with the last person she ever expected to see among the attackers. Her brother, Antonio Delgado. Maya's world tilted as she stared at her adoptive brother, Antonio Delgado, standing among the armed men who had stormed the church. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. The screams of panicked guests, the crackling flames, the rapid gunfire, it all blurred into background noise. The only thing that mattered was the truth burning in Antonio's cold gaze. He was here to kill her. "Move." Javier's urgent voice yanked her back to reality. A gunshot rang out, shattering the wooden pew beside them. Splinters flew into Maya's arm, stinging like fire. Javier didn't wait, he yanked her to her feet and sprinted toward the side exit. The men in black masks chased after them, their boots pounding against the church floor. Javier kicked open a side door, dragging Maya into the alley behind the church. Smoke and fire spilled into the night, illuminating the chaos. "We have to lose them," Javier shouted, pulling her toward his car, a beat-up old Mustang parked at the curb. But before they could reach it, tires screeched as a black SUV skidded to a stop, blocking their path. The doors flung open, and more armed men spilled out. Maya turned, panic clawing at her chest. Trapped. Javier spun toward her. "Get in." He grabbed her hand and to her horror ran straight toward the SUV. The gunman hesitated for a split second, confused. It was all the opening Javier needed. He leaped onto the hood, kicked one of the men in the face, and yanked open the driver's door. Before Maya could even process what was happening, he pulled her into the front seat and slammed his foot on the gas. The SUV lurched forward, ramming through a line of parked cars. Bullets shattered the back window, but Javier ducked low, weaving through the narrow streets. Maya gripped the dashboard, her breath ragged. "Where are we going?" "Away from them," Javier gritted out. "Who are they? Why is Antonio with them?" Javier's jaw tightened. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" Javier swerved hard, sending the SUV screeching around a corner. The pursuing cars were relentless, their headlights slicing through the dark. He exhaled sharply. "Your family isn't who you think they are, Maya. They never were." Javier drove for what felt like hours, twisting through back roads and cutting off through alleys. Finally, when the streets were empty and the gunmen had lost their trail, he pulled into an abandoned garage. The moment the SUV stopped, Maya spun to face him. "Start talking." Javier ran a hand through his hair, still catching his breath. "Your real parents, your biological parents, were murdered." Maya's stomach dropped. "What?" They were billionaires, Maya. The Morinos. They owned half of this city. And the Delgados, they didn't adopt you out of kindness. They took you because you were the sole heir to their fortune. Maya's head spun. The Morinos. She had heard that name before on the news, in hushed whispers. A powerful family that had vanished overnight. Her hands trembled. You're lying. Javier's expression hardened. Think about it, Maya. Did Victor and Isabella ever treat you like their daughter? Did they ever love you? A lump formed in her throat. No. They never had. Javier continued. Your brother Antonio, he was always meant to inherit everything. But legally, he couldn't. Not while you were alive. Realization slammed into her like a freight train. They were going to kill me. Her voice barely came out. Javier nodded grimly. They arranged the marriage to cut you off first, to make you disappear into poverty. But when they realized you might learn the truth, they decided to get rid of you permanently. Maya's vision blurred. Everything she had ever known was a lie. But there was one question left. How do you know all of this? She whispered. Javier hesitated. Then he exhaled. Because my father was one of the Morino's closest allies. Before he died, he told me to keep an eye on you. His dark eyes met hers. To protect you. No matter what. Maya's breath hitched. This entire time. Javier had known. Before she could respond, a loud bang echoed through the garage. Javier's head snapped toward the entrance. They found us. Maya's pulse spiked. We need to go. Javier grabbed a duffel bag from the back of the SUV and threw it over his shoulder. Come on. They sprinted toward the back door, but just as they reached it, gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through the garage, shattering glass and metal. Maya screamed as Javier pulled her down behind an overturned workbench. Through the chaos, she heard a familiar voice. You can't run forever, sister. Maya's blood ran cold. Antonio. She turned slowly, peering through a crack in the workbench. Antonio stood in the doorway, a pistol in his hand. Behind him, more men in black surrounded the building. Maya's stomach twisted. They weren't getting out of this. Javier's grip tightened on her wrist. Listen to me, he murmured. When I say run, you run. Understand? Her chest tightened. Javier. Do you understand? She swallowed hard and nodded. Javier's jaw clenched. Then, before she could stop him, he leaped over the workbench, gun blazing. Bullets flew as he took out two men instantly. Antonio shouted orders, but Javier was too fast, weaving between gunfire. Now, Maya, he roared. Maya bolted toward the emergency exit. She heard Antonio curse behind her, then gunshots 1, 2, 3 followed by a strangled gasp. She turned. And saw Javier hit the ground. Maya screamed. No. Antonio smirked, lowering his gun. You really thought he could save you? Maya's hands clenched into fists. For the first time in her life, she wasn't scared anymore. She was angry. And she was going to end this. Maya had spent her life running. Not anymore. She grabbed a discarded pistol from the ground and pointed it at Antonio. You should have killed me when you had the chance. Antonio laughed. You don't even know how to shoot. Maya's finger tightened on the trigger. Boom. Antonio staggered back, clutching his shoulder. His eyes widened in shock. You. I learn fast, Maya hissed. Antonio's men hesitated. The tables had turned. Their leader was wounded, and Maya wasn't the helpless girl they thought she was. Sirens wailed in the distance. Javier groaned from the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Maya dropped the gun and ran to him, pressing her hands against his wound. Stay with me, she begged. Javier's lips curled into a weak smirk. Didn't know you could shoot. I didn't either, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. As the police stormed in, arresting Antonio and his men, Maya held on to Javier. And for the first time in her life, she knew exactly who she was. She wasn't a Delgado. She wasn't a pawn. She was Maya Morino. And no one would ever take that from her again.